today I have with me a guest who, lawyer to writer, wow. I think there's a lot we need to unpack with her. Her name is Beatrice Moyo. Good morning, Beatrice. How are you?
Good morning, Candice. Thank you so much for having me.
This is a very unlikely combination. You're a lawyer, but you're an avid writer. Which came first?
Yes, so the law came first. I've been a lawyer since 2016. But in the course of my lawyering journey, I discovered that there's a gap in Zimbabwe specifically pertaining to legal text. So all the legal texts that we rely on in the legal practice are all from the 80s or the 90s.
Right.
So upon realizing that gap, I then decided to become a writer to fill in the gap.
Wow. Okay. All right. So how did you find your writing fingers, so to speak?
Thank you, Candice. So I was studying my master's in Cape Town at the University of Cape Town, master's in commercial law. And we were in a class with Africans from all over the continent. And many of them referred to texts from their jurisdictions in getting them to advance in their masters. But as a Zimbabwean, I failed and struggled, particularly in the area of corporate governance, to find text that is relevant and explains our unique corporate governance situation. So with that, I spoke to a couple of my lecturers and they encouraged me to write about it because although I had a complaint that there was no text, I couldn't wait forever for the problem to be solved. I decided then to, under the guidance of my lecturers, to get into that space and write a book. So I started with articles and my dissertation assisted me a lot. But that led to the book that we've then authored with my co-authors.
Now, just for context, how important is it and why is it significant for there to actually be local text for you to refer to, as a Zimbabwean lawyer, that is up to date with what's happening around you?
Thank you, Candice. So our situation in Zimbabwe is very unique. Our laws are constantly changing. And although we can rely on texts from other jurisdictions, at the time that we wrote the book, we had just received a new Companies and Other Business Entities Act. So there was no text that explained what the new law meant in practical terms. So it was really hard to grapple with the issues without a text that explains it in layman's terms. From our perspective as well, the corporate governance failures in our country, banks have closed and companies always shut down because of failures of them to adhere to the law, most likely because they are unaware of the terms of the law. We decided to simplify this new law to ensure that people are educated on what it requires of them to ensure that our companies no longer fail in the manner that they did in the past.
So basically what it means is you are also speaking to me. You're not just speaking to your fellow lawyers. You're also talking to me in a language I can understand, I can follow. And therefore, when I then say, oh, I didn't know, really it's that element of ignorance I have no right to argue.
Precisely, Candice, because the people who run companies are the individuals on the street. They're not lawyers. So what we sought to do is to simplify the law in a manner that an ordinary person on the street will understand. So our handbook is titled The Director's Handbook in Zimbabwe. So we targeted directors who aren't necessarily lawyers, but because of the provisions of the law are required to know what the law says, because now our new Companies Act, unlike in the past, has criminal sanction, which means you can be arrested if you fail to adhere to it, and has civil sanction, which means you can be sued for damages that are experienced by the company if you fail to adhere to it. So we wanted generally to educate people, but also to ensure that we contribute to the text and literature in the country pertaining to corporate governance.
Love that. So the Director's Handbook in Zimbabwe, a reference guide for directors, committee members and officers in light of the new Companies and Other Business Entities Act, Chapter 2431 of 2019. So there is 3 of you on this. How did you guys come together and work through this? Did you not argue through the process?
Writing with co-authors is a very interesting and difficult task, Candice, but it really helped in the sense of the depth of the content in the book. We were all, funnily enough, studying our masters in South Africa at different universities. And we all experienced the same problem that I explained to you earlier. And it was on that basis that we came together and wrote. The reason being to try and diversify as much of the content in there, because we were all focusing on different masters at the time. I was doing commercial law. My other co-author was doing investment and trade law. And the other co-author was also doing corporate law.
Right.
So we came together at that time. It was the year that COVID started, which gave us a lot of time in between our lectures. And we came together and put our heads together, and that was the result.
Beatrice, how did you enjoy the process of writing?
So the process of writing is a very difficult one, Candice. You think you have days where the words come easily, the days where there's writer's block. I think the most challenging part was when the book or the manuscript was complete, in our opinion, and we sent it out for peer review. We sent it out for review by industry leaders in the country. And when it came back, it was all read with comments and things we needed to change. And it was challenging, but it really, really assisted in ensuring that the text was relevant, not only from a legal perspective, but from a practical perspective.
Right.
Yeah, so it was actually then endorsed by Jom Tizwa, who is an industry leader in the corporate law space. And he was very instrumental in ensuring that the book was one that was ready and useful for the public consumption.
I love that. So, okay, so on this book, it's yourself, Beatrice Moyo, you've got Chido Mafongoya, and then Calvin Sabao. You guys know you've started a thing, right? So now we're looking to you to bridge that gap and fill in all the information that we don't have as the man and woman on the street. Are we getting more of these?
Yes, indeed, Candice. So this one was just generally about companies in Zimbabwe, but we've realized that there's a need for public entities and state-owned entities. So we're writing books on those as well, which will be coming up in the year.
Fantastic. Where do we get our hands on this if we want to read it?
Thank you so much. So it's available on Amazon, but it's...
round of applause. This is my constant plea with everybody. Okay,
yes.
Sorry, on Amazon?
On Amazon. So on Amazon it's $25, but you can also contact myself, Calvin, or Chido. We've got a website. If you put it in there, you'll find our details, $20, and we offer complimentary delivery in Harare.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we are looking forward to getting more of these to simplify the process for those of us who need to understand what's happening around us in terms of the law in a language that we all speak.